when you're wanting.
Okay, we can start?
Sure.
Okay. So hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. So I see some regular people. So today we will talk about, is it necessary for your school to have a presence on every platform in order to attract potential students? So my name is Annie, and I am the Marketing and Communication Manager at Duno Marketing. Benoit, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Benoit Raoul. I'm the CEO and founder of Duno Marketing. Today, I'm actually in Spain, and Ting is in Shanghai, so in our main office in Shanghai.
Benoit, maybe you can introduce.
No, so basically, to talk a little bit about Duno, then it was founded in 2017 in Shanghai, where we have our main office. Today, we are part of Decapple Group. Decapple is a French family-owned, I would say, listed agency, a large agency based in France, Spain, and Portugal, that have about 50 years of history. And today we have about 1,000 team members in all the different offices we have in Europe and in China. We have worked with many people from the field of higher education. So you have certainly some names that you might know in there. I don't know, we were talking about Rennes School of Business just 2 seconds before. ESSEC, EHL. We have worked with many different brands to support them mainly in the recruitment of Chinese students that would go on their campus abroad.
And so here's today's agenda. So overview of the higher education market in China, importance of social media and digital platform in China, and do you need to be on every social media as a higher education institution, and how to use social media to recruit students. Okay, so in this chapter, I will share an overview of the higher education market in China. So here, according to a 2022 study by Kantar, they interview about 10,000 individuals, and it was found that most aspiring students looking to study abroad are around 20 years old on average. And interestingly, a significant number of these individuals reside in the coastal regions, so such as Shanghai, Guangdong, Jiangsu, and with Beijing included, of course. And now if we dig a little bit further, so by looking at this graph, it tells us something interesting. So it turns out that most of the students who want to study abroad are actually undergraduate students. And among these undergrads, we can identify 2 main groups. So we have what we call the Shuangfei students and the transfer students. But why is that? Well, here's the deal. Every year, about 10 million high school students will take what we call the Gaokao exam, which is like the holy grail of college entrance exam in China. And this exam will determine your score, and that score determines which university you can apply to. It's a big deal because everyone wants to get into one of the top universities in China, of course. But there is a catch. There are currently about only 140 top universities in the whole country, and they can only accommodate around 1,000 students each. So yes, the competition is fierce, and even if a student successfully passes the Gaokao and gets an amazing score, there is still a chance that he or she won't get into one of those prestigious universities. Another study has also shown that actually 30% of students taking the Gaokao can reach the highest score, but only 5% of them will get into a top university. So it's simply a matter of supply and demand, and there are just way more applicants than available seats. So in situations like this, students might have to consider other options, like going to a lower rank university, choosing a different major with a lower admission requirement, or even exploring the possibility of studying abroad. So some students might enroll in a lower ranking school while preparing all the requirements to go into a school abroad. And also for some students and parents, of course, passing the CALCA is not even in their mind, so they start to prepare to go abroad since high schools. And lastly, we have this chart, so that highlights the top 100 high schools that have the strong focus on promoting education with an international perspective. And it's worth noting that most of these schools are actually international schools. So we didn't put the name of the schools, but you can see the number of schools that are in each city. And if we take a closer look at the geographical distribution of these schools, we can see that a significant number of them are located in the coastal area again. So cities like Shanghai, Beijing, Guangdong, Jiangsu stand out as having a high concentration of these international schools. So this suggests that students in this region have greater access to educational institutions that facilitate studying abroad.
Thank you, Ting, for this introduction on the I would say different numbers around China and higher education. I hope those numbers can be useful for some of you. I know the repartition of the schools going to international is super useful for campaigns, to focus the campaigns on certain regions in China and not spend your budget on the full scope of China that is really vast, that could really grow the budget massively if you try to target all China at once. So having ideas of which region you should focus on based on where the population is a super important metrics. Here, the idea is to go a little bit toward the importance of the social media and the digital platforms in China. Why they are important, and for some of you that might live abroad, you don't necessarily have that feeling and that understanding about how people behave with those social media. So here we have decided to give you a little bit of information about the behavior of users. So we have included users from 16 years old to 64 years old because you have two types of persona, and we'll see that a bit later. You have the students and you have the parents. So it's also important to have the visibility about the full scope, how people are using the social media and the different digital platforms. So we have compared some of the numbers here. Basically, it's the percentage of the internet user and how they distribute among different types of platforms. So if we look at any kind of social media platforms, we can see that China, with 80% of the user active on any kind of social media platforms, is really far above the rest of the world. Like we have put France and US and UK as reference. Let's give you an idea. Those data are coming from Digital 2023. I think it's a data portal that is giving us those data. So it's really interesting to see how, anyway, social media are really super active in China. Then we have created categories of, no, sorry, yeah, can you stay on the other slide?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we have created categories of different different platforms or social media. So you have the question and answer sites, which is pretty important in the communication of higher educations. And we can see that with about 20% of the user using this, it's pretty similar than the rest of the world. So it's active, it's there, and it's important to consider. The forum and message boards is about the same, it's 20%, which is slightly higher than the rest of the world. The messaging app, like the live chat service, these kind of things, is really above. So the rest of the world is around 10%. China is at 22%. So China is really active on those live chats. It's something super important for them. Then the microblogging, 8%. It's something super important for China. You can see 24% versus on average maybe 7% for the rest of the world. So this is something that you can consider and needs to maybe have some strategies around those platforms might be useful. The vlog is also something that pretty used, same as the microblogging in China, pretty active. And then what we will categorize in the online pinboard is a bit similar at the US in China, but for the rest, like France and UK, the users are a bit less than what we can see in China. So let's give us just an idea about how active China is on those social media. If we go to the next slide, we wanted also to give you an idea of the size of those social media. So we have categorized them and we start to have put names on them, so it's a bit easier and we can start to introduce them. So for the question and answer sites, you have Zhihu and Baidu Zhidao that are two important platforms for these Q&A sites platforms. As you can see here, Zhihu is having 110 million monthly active users. So it's a huge amount of people that are in there, and we will see it's not necessarily the biggest one. And Zhidao is 583 million active users. So when we compare with the size of the population of China, and China is basically 1.4 billion inhabitants, so it's a lot of people that are actually active on those Q&A website at least once a month. For this forum and message board, we have platforms like Tieba. Zhihu is there as well because it's also somehow perceived as a forum and message board as well. And you have Douban, that is another type of platform that is also in that category. And you can see the number of active users. So Tieba 59 million, Zhihu I would say 110, and Douban 500 million active users. There is an M missing there. Regarding WeChat, so WeChat is the main app, the main popular app in China. We have 1.3 billion monthly active users, so it's a huge platform. It's something you cannot really not consider in your strategy in a sense. Then you have the microblogging, so Weibo is a pretty active platform in China as well, with about almost 600 million active users. And then you have the vlogging platform like Kaoshuo, Douyin, and Bilibili that are pretty popular. And you can see 600 million, 700 million, and then 350 million for Bilibili. So those video platforms are really super active in China, having a lot of engagement. And then what we call online pinboard, Red, could be really an Instagram in a sense as well. Is about 200 million active users, and this is a really specific platform for, let's say, lifestyle in general, and for some of the schools, it might make sense. So I hope this introduction of some of the different social media and platforms that are useful in China gives you a little bit of let's say, eye-opening about all those platforms and the size they represent, because it's really important to understand how big they are actually to then plan and forecast your strategies. So if we go to the next slide, so the question here, do you need to be on every social media? Because, well, we have seen there are a lot of them, about 20 different that we have identified, and we haven't listed all of them. Do we have to be everywhere? So if we have one answer to give is yes, you do. But the reality is that we all have limited resources. So if we were in an ideal world, yes, it's good. You can be on every social media platforms because you have unlimited resources. You can spend your money everywhere. It's all good. And yes, being everywhere is good because you will meet part of your persona at every single touch point, but not maybe the majority of your persona. So if you start by the persona, so can you go to the next slide? Yeah, exactly. So as I mentioned earlier, for most of the higher education sector that consider going abroad, so meaning that the students will travel from China to another campus abroad, you have two persona usually. You have the students himself, but you also have the parents. And usually the parents is usually the mom. When you have the father that get involved, it's usually way more direct, way more strict. but usually the mom is there to help her children to go for the abroad, and it's somehow that person leaving the nest. So it's something also important. They are in needs of a lot of trust to let their student go abroad. So with these two persona in mind, then how do we communicate to them? So in order to facilitate some choice, we have taken some experience we have and created the next two slides. So we have a first slide where we believe it's important to invest, and we have categorized different type of schools actually. So in our experience, we have worked with business school, a category that we could put in like more creative schools, and then engineering schools. So we have made the difference between those three different type of higher education institutions. And then where shall we invest our money? Where shall we put our time in order to develop the social media for China? WeChat is a must, and we will see later at which level it come into place. It's really a must for the three different platforms. It's something that is really important as well for the parents, but also for the students. We will see both of them are engaging on that platform at certain moment of the sales cycle. What is important to have, we have for the business school, we have considered Zhehu as an important platform because it's somehow a social media in itself, but it's also a platform that is indexed on Baidu, the search engine. So it develops your SEO. So your organic positioning is developed also a lot thanks to this platform. So we believe it's pretty important for a business school to be in there. Same for an engineering school, they usually develop themselves in there. For a creative school, usually the lifestyle is somehow more important to show to potential students. And this is why we have considered that putting red here, Xiaohongshu in Chinese, or little red book, if we translate literally, we have considered that social media as more important than Zhehu for this specific type of schools in terms of positioning an order. Then in the good to have, we have positioned Weibo. So a microblogging site. It can be considered like Twitter, but you can add more pictures, more things. So it's not exactly like Twitter. So that's why we prefer to call it microblogging. So for the business school, we have Weibo. For the engineering school, we have really a similar way of engaging with this community. But for the creative school at this level, Zhehu is also important because you also want to develop your SEO, and you also have to exist on that platforms to somehow answer to some of the question that the students may have. So let's give you a first level of what we consider is important. Then we have a next slide where if you have a bit more money, if you have a bit more capacity to develop content, where can you be today? Where can you invest? So we have for each of the category, business school, creative school, and engineering school, we have decided to come with what we believe at this stage today is interesting to consider, but also keep in mind that somehow every business school or every creative school or engineering school is slightly different. So it would be better to look at your cases to advise you on really specific cases of platforms. But overall, you can take this as an advice to consider. So if I look at the business school, we have considered three different platforms. So Douyin is the equivalent of TikTok. So it's really a platform for short videos. It's something that we can see more and more in the higher education sector to do brand awareness. So really high level in the funnel. When you want the people to remember your name, then you need to have it there. Regarding the Youku, so Youku is like YouTube, so it's more long form video or slightly more long form video. And it's also important to be on this. It's also important for SEO. Youku content is also well indexed, so it makes sense to be there. And then Baijiahao is kind of a new platform in the ecosystem used for the education sector. This is also really good for SEO, and it's also kind of organized as question answer or more like let's say a Notion. So basically people putting articles, and you can work with some let's say KOLs or articles in the sense of you can engage with some people to create content for your school to exist on this specific platform that is Baijiahao. If we look at the creative school, so at this level, we have considered Weibo that we have seen on the previous one. We have considered Bilibili. So Bilibili is a type of video content platform as well, really engaging with the new generation. That is also slightly more long form. I would say 5 to 7 minutes on average, can go a bit longer. A lot about education content, so you can learn a lot of skills on Bilibili. And then Douyin for the short form video. And for the engineering school, Douban as a let's say Q&A platform or forum board, Douban is also good to be used for the engineering school. So it's more let's say it's slightly more geeky in a sense. So Douban is a really good to meet some of your audience. Kaishuo is also a video platform similar to, let's say, Youku or Bilibili. Kaishuo is a bit similar, allowing you to have long form content video, and it's more for engineering school. It's a bit more geeky as well in its usage. And then Zhedao as a question and answer platform, in addition to Zhihu, is also pretty good for engineering school. So let's give you a general overview about some of the platforms that you can consider in order to develop your strategy, where you can decide to invest some of your time and efforts to create content overall. Now that we have understood all of this, what is important is to understand how do I use those social media to do the recruitment, because most of the marketing efforts have two purposes. One is the awareness of the school, being sure that you exist, and the second one is to allow and activate some potential recruitments. So if we go into that, we have created a slide here where we have a funnel. So this is the way we are working on our side. So we have a funnel where we have the awareness level, so really, really high level. Then we have the status of the user that is more at informing, start to have some interest in specific schools. Then we have the interesting, so really diving into having some question and answer, start talking and exchanging with the schools. Then the applying moment, and then the enrolling moment. So we have defined those moments, and then you can see we have listed some of the platforms at different level, because some of the platform can be used at different moments. So we can see WeChat is at every moment, and we have to be smart in the way we use it. The website is the second one, is also important in the way we engage with it. Xiaohongshu can also be used for awareness and for interest. You have Weibo at the first level, Baidu, all the Baidu ecosystem, the Baidu search ecosystem. And then you have the additional platforms that we have talked about. So Zhihu, Zhedao, Douban, and you have the Bilibili and Douyin that can be used at a different level here. And that's pretty important to understand where you put your investments if you want to do awareness, informing, or interesting moment in the customer journey. From this, what is also pretty important to have prepared when you start to communicate is to work on your tone of voice. And we usually advise to have a slightly different tone of voice when you are talking as a everyday communication. If you are talking to a community, so maybe your alumni, you can have a specific tone of voice also for your alumni. And then the official communication of the schools, when you have certain parts that are pretty important to communicate, you can have a slightly different tone of voice. As you can see here, basically we have 4 different tones, basically authoritative and casual, transparent and private, inclusive and exclusive, encouraging, or regimented. And then based on the tone that we have to use for everyday communication on social media, for the community communication, and for the official communication, we have slightly different tone of voice. And I'm pretty sure you have this in your regular communication. I don't know if you have done something as visual as this in order to help everyone that is writing content, but this is pretty useful to create in order to be able to collaborate with external copywriter or working with different agencies in the world. Communicating this tone of voice really help the agencies to do a better job. So that's why we also work on this with some of our clients to create this tone of voice in order to be able to have this documentation ready and prepared to work together. Then we have worked at somehow starting to have cheat sheets. So two documents, the two next documents will be delivered to you separately, and you can download them separately. That's really here to help you make decisions and prepare your strategy where it comes to communication in China. We have decided to list you some of the different importance here and the different platforms so you understand where you can put them. So in terms of the platforms, you have the lists on the left side. Then you have the categories. So we have listed the different categories since the beginning of this presentation. So WeChat as a messaging, Weibo as a microblogging, Zhihu as a Q&A platform, Zhedao as a Q&A platform as well. And then we have all the different platforms that are listed this way. Then at which stage you should use each of those platforms. So it's pretty important to understand at which stage you will activate those platforms, because it will help you in the tone of voice and how you will phrase your message. So as we say, WeChat can be used at all levels. So it's up to the school to decide where they will use WeChat. And the easiest is for the conversion part. So it's really a bit lower in the funnel, because to have WeChat followers, it means that those people have met your brand before. So the way it's usable at all stages is because WeChat allow to do advertising. They have kind of an SEM functions or social media functions internally. And then you can basically advertise people that are like some other accounts. So there is things that are a bit similar than what you can see on Facebook or Instagram in the way you communicate, but it's not as sharp as what you can find on Instagram or Facebook in terms of advertising, but it allows to do social media advertising at a good level. So it can be used at awareness level. But it means those people know the name of your school already when they decide to follow you as a WeChat account. So they need to have met you somewhere. So it's harder to do high level of awareness. It's easier to do engagement with the people that are following you at a lower stage. And with the chatting capacity, it's really something that you can use pretty low in the funnel for the question and answer directly with the parents of the students to reassure them. And you can even move to private conversations directly from the WeChat ecosystem. So that's something that is really specific about WeChat. Then Weibo, we are really into a high level, so awareness stage, pretty high level, and you can talk with Weibo to parents and students as well. Then for many of the other platforms, the persona that is identified there is mainly the students, because they are more, let's say, younger generation kind of platforms. But some of them also help the SEO. So that will be reassuring sometimes for the parents if they type the school name and they see that, okay, all that content exists on Baidu, it's reassuring for the parents. Usually they don't even click on some of the links. They will just look at the first page result and see, okay, this school is having some documentation. So even though the main persona when you create the content is the students, it can be useful for the parents to have an overview about is the school having a good reputation on average. And then for the type of programs, so we have put some programs in terms of content. We haven't done here the work for the difference between undergraduate and graduate and continuous education. But it may have also different impact about the type of students that you are willing to search for. So we have seen in the statistics earlier, the undergraduates are actually usually people that are sometimes engaged or blocked in China for an additional year. So they do study in China, but not necessarily in the program they expect, and they are waiting to go for abroad. So they are still young people, around 20 to 21 on average from the statistics. So they define their project, they work with their parents to be able to finance something, because going abroad to do a master program means you go for 4 years. So it's a massive amount of money for those families, and only a smaller part of the population is able to offer this kind of studies. For the master, it happened a bit later. So either people go directly for a master after they finish their bachelor program, or they work for some years. And we have seen that in many cases, 4 to 7 years of experience, the people will go for a master abroad, but usually they become their own financer. So the people will have put money on the side and finance themselves their studies. So at that moment, you have really different type of persona, and you need to communicate at different stages for those people at this level. And then you have the MBA or executive MBA programs that comes a bit later in the spectrum. So of course, here for a generic presentation, we cannot cover all the cases, but we try to give you some elements that allows you to make at least some decisions for the communication in China. And then we have another cheat sheet that we have prepared. If you were to have a timeline, because it's also pretty important to understand how you distribute your time all along the year. And this is with the experience we have built over time, how basically the year spreads out for an intake in September. So I understand some of you may have an intake in January or February. But here we have taken this calendar with an intake in September because it's the majority of you guys that have an intake in September, and some of you only have in January. So if we take this into consideration, there are different phases in the year where we can see how the people are progressing. So we advise people to invest in the awareness phase, basically from September to December, trying to really build up the awareness of the school. So you can see below, the purpose is to create the school awareness. Then for the students themselves, what they are doing at this stage is they are establishing a list of potential schools. And this is literally how people are working in China. They create a list of about 10 to 20 different type of schools that they would like to go internationally. If you don't exist at this stage for the persona, you don't exist in the following steps of their minds. So you have to appear on that list. This is why all the ranking, I mean, many of you are doing a lot of efforts about the rankings to exist and appear in some lists. So when people decide, they can see your name and put your name down on their list. This is what they are doing at this stage. What you need to have at this stage in terms of activities, we suggest to have a bit of campaigns to basically have your name out, especially if you can with student associations or KOLs, because this is where your name can appear in front of the eyes of those students that are in their mindset to go abroad. You can have a couple of activities at this level. What you need to have as a content, so the advantages of your school, advantages of the city you are in, why people would go and travel to that city. Of course, still English speaking countries or cities are still having kind of a priority in people's mind. But with the relationship with the US, the families are less and less eager to send their children to the US directly. With the Brexit in Europe, sending the children to the UK is also for some families a bit more difficult. So we can see that Australia and New Zealand have a slight peak now in their registration of students in English-speaking country. But then Europe has something to play now. So extended Europe with North Africa has some games to play now. And we believe it's a good moment. But you need to reassure the families that education in another language, so can be French, can be Spanish, can be German. Is it good? Is it interesting for their students? Why they should learn another language? What type of city is in there? Is it easy to find a place to live? Having some of those hard questions that needs to be reassuring for the parents. After that, the life on the campus. So how will look like a year for a person that comes and visits you in your campus. And then the students' testimonials. So if you can have like a short video, students' testimonials, or blog writing type of content about students' testimonials, that's also super important at this level in terms of content. Then you have the second level, the information. So January, February, March, before starting the recruitment campaigns, you need to create the credentials in terms of the schools. So basically, school research, school ranking are the things that the students are looking for. Like what the school is doing, are they at research level? Are they engaged in some of the rankings? Are they good? Do I have good feedbacks? What do I have learned in the first part of my journey? And then in terms of activities, it's really important to have done content marketing and to have a Chinese website at this level, because this is what people will really check. Your SEO, it's not at that moment that it needs to be built, because it's something that takes some long time to build. But at this period of the time, this is what people will consume as content. So they will really try to find a lot of information about your school at this level. And then what kind of information people are looking for. So program studies, further or future career that they can go for, and the interview process. So interview with students or teachers, they try to see more of this type of content in there. There, the interest. So this is the moment where the application might start as well. So some people will apply pretty early, even in March. So post just after the Chinese New Year. So in China, you have Chinese New Year at the end of January or in February. And after that in China, basically families will start to take some decisions. So it can be as early as March where you start to have application. And some of the family will stay in that interest moment a bit longer, from March to June. And then they need to have their application done really the latest early July, because they need the language test, they need to have the visa, they need to have some protocols to be able to go and be in the country by the beginning of September for some of the schools. So we really advise to have finalized your campaigns, recruitment campaigns, by end of June, the latest, really. In that interest parts, so basically here is the answer the students is really what is important, and answer the parents' concerns. That's what you need to focus on in terms of a school. You need to establish the students themselves or the families will establish a top 3 of the preferred schools. So from their extended list, 10 to 20 schools, they will have shortened down like to 3 at that moment, and they will apply only to maybe 2 or 3 schools. So you have to stay at the top of their list. That's why you are doing all those marketing efforts and all those communication with them. And then they will start to search practical information about the school. So exactly some of the content that we have talked before, but really in the practicality of how they can make it happen. And sometimes it's the how to apply, what is the cost, this kind of information. So you can see there in terms of campaigns, that's the moment where you want to spend a big part of your paid advertising, because that's the moment people will be engaging into searching for you, searching for schools. Then you have fairs. So I know in China, they are organizing a lot of fairs, a lot of events around this period, because that's really the recruitment moment. So you can have part of your team to actually travel in China. Now it's reopened. It was closed for 3 years, but now it's reopened. So if you can come and go to those recruitment campaigns, that's really a really good moment to do it. At this moment, your Chinese website and especially landing pages for the paid advertising or the social media advertising will be really important. So you drive the people to clear landing pages where they know what they can expect from. So that's really important. Having your recruitment teams or your agents. So depending on your strategy, if you have your own recruitment teams or if you work through agents, they need to be ready answering the questions. This is the top moment of the year where they need to be on board. And then you need to have easy to share WeChat content, because when people are down in the funnel, they will usually end up into WeChat. And for most of the questions, you can directly share with them some information. So basically, how is the application process? If you have a WeChat content that is ready with this, you can just share to them. And then it facilitates the life of the agent or the recruitment team. So this can be also prepared a bit in advance and from 1 year to another and then updated. In terms of content creation at this moment, future career, alumni success stories, recruitment events, and application information. This is what people are looking for. And then we enter into the application process and enrollment process that are somehow at the end of the marketing funnel and more in the hands of the recruitment team of the agent. So we have listed that here for you to picture that during those moments, the sales process is not finished, but the marketing process needs to hand over to the sales team. From one school to another, we have seen different moments of sharing from marketing to sales. It's different in every organization, but it's just to give you an idea. So those are on the two cheat sheets that we can share with you as well that could help you in terms of organization and how to engage in terms of content for the social media in China. Thank you. We have a bit of time for question and answer, so it's 11:43. If you have questions, now it's the moment. We try to have shared quite a lot of content. This content will be shared as a replay as well to all the people who registered, and that will be online on our website as well.
Thank you for the presentation. I actually have a question. A quick one, but I guess an important one. How much for you would be an investment, a correct amount of investment into digital marketing? Let's say I have an agent in China and I have a team here that does international development. I mean, the whole point is that we also need to invest in digital marketing because we need to increase awareness for our school, and then it's not enough just to have an agent there if we want to touch more people, no matter what are the programs we are proposing. So let's say I wanna invest in digital marketing to go to China. What's the investment? How much?
I will say it depends on the actual reputation of the school in China. So even if you never have worked your SEO directly in China, you might appear on some international ranking or some I would say PR, and this might be relayed into the Chinese ecosystem already. So you need to have a look at this first, understand your what we call a digital footprint. So what is your actual digital footprint in China? If you start from zero, or if you start with already an existence, it's not exactly the same cost. So you have different aspects at this level. What do we advise schools to say? Okay, doesn't matter if you want an idea of budget, then we can distribute the budget differently. The minimum budget you need to consider to actually be able to do something in China is around 25 to 30,000 euro a year to be able to engage on certain type of content. So a bit of SEO, certainly a paid campaign around the moment of the recruitment in order to exist. So that allow you to have a bit of investment at this level. I would say the schools that invest a lot on the other spectrum are around 100 to 200,000 euro a year, and they make that level of investment. So it's really high level of investment, but they also have sometimes either higher fees to enter in their school, so a higher level at this level, or they recruit a lot of students. We have schools that recruit, I would say, between 100 to sometimes 300 or 400 Chinese students. So they can invest that amount of money because then at the end, the investment per student is not that big. So really depends of the spectrum. So one of the metrics we use, for example, to also give you an idea, is when we do paid advertising for schools that is having low level of search engine optimization. A contact, so generation of a contact will be basically 1,200 RMB. So that's about 150 euro per contact.
Per lead.
Per contact.
Per contact, not per lead. So it's not a lead yet. It's just a contact.
It's not a lead yet. For us, it's a contact. So someone that fills up a form somewhere, it costs that on average. Then if you go to a school that have pretty good SEO, pretty good reputation, then you can go down to something that will be about 100 euro per contact, even a bit less sometimes. Okay, so that's roughly how much it costs in terms of SEM to really generate qualitative contacts.
Okay, that's kind of expensive, actually.
Yeah, it's expensive, but it's way cheaper than an agent. In
where? In Asia?
Than an agent. So
yes,
your agent costs.
Yes.
Yeah, it's also more than this. So this is also what we benchmark against. Is when you start your digital strategy, there is sometimes to share the work with your agents. So some of the schools we work with, actually all the contact we generate, they give them to their agent. Because they have local agents and they want to really develop the trust and bring value to their agents. So they build this, and their job is to develop the awareness level. So they invest a lot in awareness and a bit less in lead generation. So contact generation, they invest a bit less, but if they generate, then they give to the agent. Some other school strategy have a different approach to that, and they decide, no, we generate most of our intake ourselves. So every money we put it into the lead generation online, and we have almost never agent or occasionally. So it's a complete different strategy as well. So that's why it's, I mean, I try to give you ideas and tips, but it's also diverse based on your own strategy and your own networks.
Okay. So I mean, it's not mandatory that I have an agent in China. If I invest in digital marketing, then I can have my team here handling the contacts, and I don't need someone to be there. I can send 1 or 2 people once or twice a year for a fair or something, but
Yeah.
I don't have to have an agent. Okay.
In order to reassure the family, having someone speaking Chinese is important.
Okay.
Okay, and it's mainly a Chinese to Chinese business. So basically having someone Chinese in your team, if you want to go and somehow not have an agent, I will strongly advise you to have a Chinese contact relay that will be important for the families and for the students when they arrive on the campus. So sometimes they will animate the Chinese community when you come around.
Amazing. Thank you for this information.